Welcome to Weather Extra. I'm First Alert Meteorologist Jillian Johnson. Many communities across the Lone Star State are still reeling after torrential rain produced catastrophic flooding throughout Independence Day weekend. The death toll is truly unfathomable and continues to grow as the search for the missing carries on in those hardest hit areas. Deaths related to the severe weather on July 4th weekend have been reported across 6 different Texas counties, which are Burnett, Kendall, Kerr, Travis, Tom Green, and Williamson. To put into perspective the amount of loss caused by these horrific floods, in Kerr and Kendall counties alone, there have been far more fatalities than there were due to Hurricane Harvey. The destruction you're seeing left hundreds displaced and large swaths of infrastructure damaged or washed away. And with no signs of survivors in days, the operation then shifted to what officials describe as a grim and complex recovery. Texas Governor Greg Abbott stated the search and recovery will not stop until every single person is found. The hardest hit area was in Kerr County, where the vast majority of deaths and missing people occurred. 7 months worth of rain fell in less than 2 hours. The Guadalupe River in Hunt, which is located in Kerr County, rose to about 26 feet, roughly the height of a 2-story building, over the course of just 45 minutes. A 20-foot wall of water rushed downstream, creating scenes of devastation that stretched as far as the eye could see, with piles of destroyed homes and businesses lying on damaged roads and along the banks of the Guadalupe River in Kerrville. Men, women, children, families all swept away while the flood waters rose in the middle of the night. Many of the children who tragically passed away were attending Camp Mystic, an all-girls summer camp located on the banks of the Guadalupe. While the worst of the damage occurred in the Texas Hill Country, torrential rainfall also brought plenty of loss to both people and property across parts of central Texas. More than a dozen people died in the Austin region due to the raging floodwaters. Video captured the rising waters in the San Gabriel River near Georgetown, which caused trees, cars, and even homes to float away. Record rainfall caused the San Saba River to rise more than 34 feet over the holiday weekend. While water did manage to come into some homes and RV parks, thankfully, no lives were lost. In Tom Green County, record rainfall caused a flash flooding across San Angelo. Over 100 water rescues were conducted, and sadly, 1 fatality was reported. There's been countless stories of tragedy and heartbreak due to these devastating floods. And while there's an unimaginable amount of loss, there's also hundreds of stories that many did survive. We now get to share one survival story. A 94-year-old and her group of relatives lived to tell what it was like experiencing the floods in their nearly 100-year-old cottage that's nestled along the Guadalupe River in Hunt, Texas.
Nestled along the Guadalupe River in Hunt, Casa del Rio has long been a place of peace. 94-year-old Betty Madison has lived here full-time since the early 80s.
We've had it since the 60s, and it was built in the 20s.
The 4th of July usually brings fireworks, swimming, watermelon, and fellowship. But this year, around 4 a.m., disaster came surging through their home.
Threw open our door and said, "Hey, we're flooded, we got to get out."
Barry, Betty's grandson, and several relatives and their dogs rushed into the attic as water came in.
We could hear screams everywhere. I saw probably the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in my life, which was the water coming up through the wooden floors and the cracks silently, very quickly.
When they looked outside at the river, cars trapped in rushing waters still had people inside.
There were cars with their headlights on with people in them screaming, going down the river at the 2nd level.
Water began inching up the attic stairs. The family created a rope out of Christmas lights and tied them around the chimney, planning their escape. Then came a miracle. The water began to recede.
It dropped a foot, and then it dropped 3 feet, and then it kept going.
The whole time, Grandma Betty sat quietly, praying in a chair.
And Barry came by and he said, "Noni, do you want to pray?" And I said, "Yes." He prayed a beautiful prayer. Within a short time, probably 5-10 minutes, I'm not sure, the water began to recede.
Everyone eventually sheltered at a nearby church until that evening when the National Guard arrived to get them out.
At 94, she was pulling herself up.
When you're under pressure like that, you do a lot of things. I had help from the National Guard, but they told me to go up, so that was what I did.
The cottage, though battered, still stands. But Betty's only source of income is gone, and flood insurance was unaffordable. The family is now turning to the community for help. Their GoFundMe page has already raised more than $15,000.
She said this out loud: I want to live here and I want to die here.
I'll just pray for those that were left behind.
And 14-year-old twins from Waco were both rescued from their summer camps on the Guadalupe River and had the chance to tell their story of survival. News 10's Isabella Quintanilla joins us now with her story.
I heard a counselor come into our cabin and say, "Hey, our cabin's flooding. We need help."
Clara, who is staying in the nurse's cabin on higher ground, says that's when she started to realize something was wrong.
I remember her saying, "It's coming in quick. It's coming from the closet."
Later hearing on a walkie-talkie that there were girls on the roofs of their cabin. But it wasn't until the morning when she saw the devastation with her own eyes that the gravity of the situation hit her.
I saw the girls. I mean, there were so many girls crying, throwing up, and I saw blood. And this is whenever I realized, okay, like, this is really something that's happening. And then around then too is whenever I heard helicopters flying around the camp.
Nolan was also in a cabin on higher ground and didn't realize the severity of the flooding until he heard the stories from nearby cabins.
There was this one counselor saying that he had to get his kids out of the window or something when there was water just rushing in, and there was a kid that was trying to grab all his stuff, and the counselor said, you got to get out of here or else you're going to die. There was another counselor talking about how he woke up and he felt water on him, but he thought it was another counselor pranking him at first. But then he looked outside of his window and the field that he knew, it was covered in water that he said it looked like an ocean.
At Camp Mystic, Clara and the other girls had to be evacuated by a military vehicle and then a bus.
It's fresh like spring, we want to pass it on.
In this viral video, you can actually see Clara singing along with her fellow campers.
We knew that singing would help comfort the other girls. So it was kind of like we just all kind of started singing together, and it really made a difference. There was joy on that bus from the singing.
But as they evacuated, driving past Camp La Junta, she says the one thing on her mind was her twin brother.
After I had seen my brother's campgrounds, I was almost convinced that I would never get to be in the presence of him again.
Whenever everyone comes on talking about Mystic and how there were people missing, people dead, that's when I thought my sister could be one of those people, and I just have to prepare for the worst.
Thankfully, Clara and Nolan were reunited and got to go home with their parents. But their mother, Suzanne Shelton, says their hearts hurt for all the kids who couldn't and the families that didn't get to say goodbye.
You're relieved, but you almost also are overwhelmed with a sense of guilt because you got to bring your two children home and other families weren't as fortunate.
I felt guilty because I was able to stand there and hug my sibling when I could see people around me crying because theirs weren't there.
So how did all of this flooding happen? For more on the weather setup that causes catastrophic flooding across the state, here's First Alert meteorologist Sean Bellafury.
Independence Day weekend, the flooding across the hill country, absolutely heartbreaking. The dozens of lives lost, many cities and towns just devastated by the flooding. So what happened? Why did all this rain fall in just a short period of time? Well, the answer is the tropics. First off, starting down in Kerrville, I do want to show you that this 24-hour rain estimation starting the afternoon of July 3rd, a lot of this actually fell in just about a 6 to 12-hour time frame during the overnight time period, 9 to 12 inches, and falling right along the river. So all of that water had to go somewhere, and unfortunately the river rose about 20 feet in about an hour's time frame. Believe it or not, though, the heaviest rain across the state was in parts of Burnett County, Williamson and Travis County, where we saw 1 to 2 feet of rain between July 4th and July 7th, most of that falling on Saturday, July 5th. And those very heavy rainfall totals, they almost look like a tropical storm or something had moved through. Well, that's actually what happened. The remnants of former tropical storm Barry moving into the state. Barry made landfall across Mexico's east coast right around the end of the month of June. And up to the north of Barry, we had a cold front also moving towards Texas at the same time. Now, the jet stream, which helps to move storm systems along, that was well away from our area. High pressure was also across the desert southwest. So all of that moisture and energy coming from Barry just got stopped in its tracks across Texas and into Mexico. The cold front stalling out, not allowing it to go north. high pressure to the north, not allowing it to go north. Area of low pressure to the west, not allowing it to move. So that area of low pressure, the moisture, the energy just sat across the state for a couple of days. And once this ridge of high pressure moved eastward, it really started the moisture transport into the atmosphere, giving us days and days of off and on tropical downpours until high pressure building into the desert southwest squashed the moisture, drying us out late week. So where did all this come from? We've got Tropical Storm Barry's moisture. We have that stalled cold front, but we also have a little bit of a lack of weather knowledge in West Texas. And no, I don't mean we don't know what the weather is, but we have limited observations. These are all the spots, at least across the southern plains, that provide 12-hour weather balloon launches. And notice that there is a big hole where a lot of that rain fell. We also have a hole off in the desert southwest too, right across the Four Corners where one of those ridges of high pressure was. So both of those areas, we just have a lack of data that we can ingest into our forecast models. So whenever we have a lack of forecast model data, the models have to make some estimations. And this big rainfall hole, or this big area where we have no upper level data, is where the majority of the rain fell. So long-term forecast models not able to pick up on it. A lot of the data that we were receiving from those forecast balloons were not where all that heavy rain fell. Reporting in the studio, Sean Bellafury, KWTX News 10.
Welcome back to Weather Extra. We know that flooding in the Texas Hill Country is common, but no one foresaw the disaster that was coming. CBS News' Jason Allen has more on the warnings that were issued ahead of time.
The first sign of trouble came Wednesday, July 2nd, 2 days before the flood. The Texas Division of Emergency Management activated state emergency response resources, citing increased threats of flooding. On Thursday, the National Weather Service brought in extra staff to monitor for flooding and issued a flood watch. At 1:14 a.m. local time on Friday, the agency sent out its first emergency alert for Kerr County. That triggered cell phone alerts and weather radios, but it did not mention evacuation. It sent another alert at 3:35 a.m. Again, no mention of evacuation. At 4:03 a.m., Kerr County residents were urged to move to higher ground now, calling the flood an extremely dangerous and life-threatening situation. Time-lapse video shows the water level rising to 23.4 feet in Kerrville. It only took 45 minutes for the Guadalupe River to rise 26 feet in some places. The Hill Country is widely known as Flash Flood Alley because the intense rain that hits the hills, it falls on limestone, and the runoff roars down canyons. Back in 1987, a flash flood killed 10 teenage campers. CBS News teams captured video as people were rescued from treetops and out of the raging river. 8 years ago, local officials say a lack of funding prevented emergency sirens from being installed. Today, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick told us the state could fund an emergency alert system.
If they can't afford to do it, then let us do it.
Is that a possibility?
Sure, we have a special session starting 2 weeks from today. And I think we can take that up and do some other things of funding these sirens. If there had been a siren, maybe that would have sparked people to say, oh, we have a massive disaster like 5 minutes away.
Jason Allen, CBS News in Kerrville, Texas.
First Alert Chief Meteorologist Brady Taylor had the chance to speak with a hydrologist from the National Weather Service to learn more about the different types of flooding and the alerts issued to the public.
The National Weather Service on any given year issues over 4,000 flash flood warnings, and flash flood deaths sometimes can be more than what we talk about on other severe weather. So we're talking with Dr. Amanda Schroeder from the National Weather Service, a hydrologist. So Amanda, when people are thinking floods, not all floods are the same. What's the difference between, say, your regular river flooding and your flash flooding?
Yeah, so there are definitely some differences between river flooding and flash flooding. Typically, the time duration is going to be a little different. Your river floods typically last more on the time scale of days to weeks, whereas the traditional definition of a flash flood would be the rapid inundation of water onto normally dry land over a shorter period of time. So those typically, it's within 6 hours of what caused it, which oftentimes is heavy rainfall. But yeah, so those timescales for flash flooding is usually on the order of minutes to hours, whereas river flooding is days to weeks.
Explain to people, let's talk flash flood, the difference between the advisories you put out, watches, and warnings for that potential of flooding.
So for watches, advisories, and warnings, watches are in your time frame of they're issued 6 to 48 hours before the event starts. So think of a watch as your ingredients are coming together, but they're not necessarily, the development of the flash flood hasn't started yet. So that's a time for people to become prepared. Now, when it comes to the flood advisories, those are issued once the flood has started or is about to, but those are designated to alert the public for less severe types of impacts. It's more of an inconvenience. That being said, if you don't take caution when you encounter these kinds of floods that an advisory would have been out for, it can harm life and property. So you do need to be careful. So that would be the action for those. When it comes to flash flood warnings or river flood warnings for that matter, those are issued to alert the public when we have the flash flood or the river flood ongoing or about to begin, and those have more significant impacts. So that's a time when you need to take action to protect yourself, because it can be a threat to life and property.
Straight ahead on Weather Extra, we hear from some of the volunteers who are helping find closure for the friends and families of those that lost loved ones. Welcome back to Weather Extra. After the floodwaters swept through the hill country, volunteers joined the search for the missing. Neighbors looking for neighbors they'd never met.
There's still people that need to be recovered. So.
Louis Deppy drives his mud-caked truck past roadblocks and into the heart of the flood zone every day, refusing to let the water drown his resolve to find his friend's daughter. 21-year-old Joyce Catherine Baden was staying in a cabin with 3 of her friends when it was swallowed by raging waters.
There was an opportunity to save her life, and that we got in our car and we came.
In sweltering heat, Deppy's been knee-deep in debris, searching for someone who feels like family.
It's for love, and this is what I would want somebody to do for me.
This is the mostly unseen story of the search for the missing in the Texas Hill Country. A quiet but crucial network of volunteers walking through heartbreak, guided by a compass of hope.
The water went that high.
Yeah. Like many searchers, Louis Deppy isn't from this community. He doesn't know the layout, but he knows loyalty. And when Ty Baden's daughter was swept away, he came. Her body has been found, but 2 of her friends are still unaccounted for, so Deppy is still here.
How long will you continue to give up your days to do this?
I don't have a time limit, so however long it takes.
Nearby, Jonathan McComb doesn't wear a badge, and he hasn't lost anyone in the flood. But among the hundreds of volunteers, he may be the closest to all of this.
Oh my God!
When a catastrophic flood swamped nearby Wimberley in 2015, McComb was the only survivor in a home washed away by the Blanco River. It took everything that mattered to him: his wife, his 6-year-old son, his 4-year-old daughter.
How are you able emotionally to put yourself back in a situation that is so similar to the one where you lost your wife and 2 young children?
Because I know what those folks are going through, and this is more about them than it is me.
For a decade, McComb has returned to the site of Texas tragedies to help bring closure, because he knows what it's like to hope for a miracle and prepare for the worst. Hope has returned for McComb. He's remarried with a 5-year-old daughter who knows his story and the reason why Daddy had to leave her on a holiday.
That was a tough hug when I left her on July 4th to come out here to help, but she understood. And
you told your 5-year-old about it?
And I said, there's a lot of people out there hurting, and I'm going to go help them.
And what did she say?
Gave me a hug and said, I love you.
The compassion of volunteers doing the hardest work of all, refusing to let the lost be forgotten.
Mary Jane's trunk.
For Eye on America, I'm Janet Shamlian in Ingram, Texas.
Coming up next on Weather Extra, we hear from the man behind messages of faith and support for those devastated by the floods. Welcome back to Weather Extra. In the small river towns along the Guadalupe River, you can't look far without seeing devastation, but amid all that destruction are signs of love.
Well, professionally, I'm retired from insurance brokerage and military, etc. My life is, my family's life, my wife and I's life is disaster relief. Those are not good. We go into a community and instead of being first responders, we're first impactors.
Going down the road that connects these now devastated hill country towns, you'll spot little glimpses of hope nestled amongst the ruins of so many lives. Paintings of big red hearts, in words like Jesus wept or hearts hurt.
What does heart hurt mean?
Everybody can relate to a hurting heart. It's okay for them for a window of time to weep, to mourn, to say, my heart is broken. It's broken. I don't need more barbecue. I don't need more hand sanitizer. I need my heart fixed.
Dave Graham goes by Cowboy Dave. He's the man behind these inspirational messages. Amidst the pure destruction, he drops signs of hope.
And they drive by their community and they see hell, and then they're like, that's nice. And I'm gone, so it's anonymous. Isn't that great?
He truly is a first impactor. Cowboy Dave has helped heal well over 40 communities around the country struck by natural disasters.
This is the worst thing I've ever seen.
Which is why he's painting a special piece for the hill country.
Broken heart. Well, no, this will be a strong heart.
On a big boulder that the raging Guadalupe River seemingly dropped here last Friday, Cowboy Dave is leaving behind his most recognized creation, a big red heart.
So my whole purpose of what I do is to give someone 15 seconds to drive by and be like, what the heck? Or, that's nice.
What they deserve is a chance to smile again.
If you're looking for ways to help those impacted by these catastrophic floods across the Lone Star State, take out your phone and scan the QR code right there on your screen. That will take you directly to a story on our website with a list of different donation drives happening across Central Texas. And as we cover these devastating flooding across the state, remember the lives lost. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families, loved ones, and anyone impacted by this tragedy. That's all we have for you on this week's episode of Weather Extra. We'll see you next time.